Hello guys, it's Emperor Borges here with a video today. Today, welcome to my first YouTube class. So it is that we are excited about our new candidates, our new students, our new cadets, and adults that participate in our Imperial transition. And so today I will be teaching the basics of the Imperial ranking system, the chain of command, and the rules of regulations that are going to be taking place in the Imperial game and in the group chat of Facebook. So, for those who are wondering, I am Emperor Borges, known as Psycho Lion, and I am your commissioner of the Empire. Basically, I'm your whole director of the whole entire empire. Basically, I'm in charge of everything that's been going on. So, today, this moment right now, at the second here, we're going to learn the enlistment ranks of the Imperial ranks. So, we're going to start with something simple. This is our first rank insignia. This is when you join the Navy or Army. Your rank is going to look like two gray squares, like that. It's going to be called, in the Army, it's called a private. And in the Navy, it's called a recruit. Once you graduate boot camp, you will be receiving your first blue square on the right side, and the gray square will still remain on your left. That is known as an Imperial Private First Class in the Army, and in the Navy, it's called an Imperial Apprentice. Once you're doing what you're doing and you get the job done, you'll become an Imperial Senior in the Navy, and it's also known as an Assistant Storm Corporal. Well, in the Marines, they call it like a Lance Corporal, but in the actual Army of the Imperial Galactic, it's called an Assistant Corporal, and for Navy, it's called Imperial Senior. So yeah, it's supposed to turn like that, because like when you're ready to lead, you have to look like you're in position already. That's how it's supposed to look like. And the next rank, we have a rank insignia of two gray squares on top and two blue squares on the bottom. Wonder what that's called. In the Army, it is called a Stormtrooper Corporal, known as an Imperial Officer Third Class. Basically, Navy has like petty officers, third, second, first class. Imperial Navy is going to be like, they're called Imperial Officers. That's what they're known as for enlistment. But for corporals, they're not like sergeants. They act like they're sergeants, but they're not. As you can see, Cadet Corporal Cobra has the rank with two gray squares on top and two blue squares on bottom. She is slightly in charge of the industry that's been going on with some places that I put her in. She's supposed to manage our like recruits to build, which we don't have much recruits yet. They're like basically the specialists of the building and stuff. So they're kind of like sergeants, and again, they're not sergeants. So yeah, the third class for Imperial Navy, these guys, the third class, carry only pistols and shotguns. I'm sure shotguns are a third class category, but yeah, if I'm aware of what I'm learning. So, alrighty, next here, this is a sergeant. A sergeant would have three blue squares on the bottom and three gray squares on top, known as an Imperial Officer Second Class. Just like a third class petty officer, but you have more access to weapons. For like second classes, you have the ability to touch assault rifles, submachine guns, and snipers. I think snipers are second class category. but I'm not quite sure yet. But that's what I'm thinking. Second class petty officers carry around that. And sergeants, they're responsible for like screaming at the recruits to motivate them better, or privates. And these guys are really tough and steady. But these guys will also be in charge of the boot camp. Basically, they'll run everything that's in the boot camp and not the whole empire. And so, yeah. For Imperial Officer second classes, they have upgrade classes of more rifles to be accessed. And for the next rank, this is a staff sergeant. An Imperial staff sergeant is like a sergeant, but it's the senior version of the sergeant. It has four gray squares on top and 4 blue squares on the bottom. And in the Navy, it is called an Imperial First Class, Officer First Class. Those access like explosives, snipers, light machine guns, you name it. Those will give you access to artillery if not needed. And they're also the assistant chief petty officers to help out the chiefs instruct the privates, because those guys will get you at boot camp. Those guys will get you. You got to be careful if you see one of those higher. They're like the deadliest ranks that you'll ever know when you're a private or a recruit. As for Parward trying to sit back down at his desk, we're gonna go over to the higher ranks, because the higher ones is what we're going to be really careful for. The next one is a sergeant first class, known as a chief Imperial officer. A chief will have 5 gray squares on top and 5 blue squares on the bottom. And they're known as sergeant first classes in the Army. If you happen to run one of these guys, I remember how brutal they were. This is kind of inspiring towards my chief in the United States Navy Junior program. Those guys are nowhere near to be messed with. I remember having to be screamed at by one of those guys. Oh my god. When I was a private, my god, those guys are no fun to be messed with. And they made us do like 100,000 of push-ups, made me do like 100 sit-ups, had to run like 1.5 miles, almost ran like 2 miles. These bad boys are not there to be messed with. That is what a chief Imperial officer looks like, and not someone who twerks in my class. Alright, next. This is the rank that I could have been if I was in the Imperial, like, enlistment still. I would have been known as a senior chief Imperial officer, known as a master sergeant. Those guys are the senior versions of the chiefs. And they're also the senior versions of the sergeant first class. These guys are intros to the officers. And what they do, they're like the top guys. They're almost like lieutenants. And even Master Chiefs are like that too. But, just like Chiefs, with the Chief Imperial Officer, they're tough against you. But, and another thing that I forgot to mention that a Chief does too, is that they also teach the class, like an instructor level. So, like, example, right now I'm doing a Chief's job. I'm teaching you guys class, making sure you guys know your rifles and stuff, and know how to attack players when it comes to the world, in many tactic ways of the strategy. That stuff is important to know, that when you see a chief, ask questions, or hire, even an officer, they'll tell you. With that kind of stuff, that kind of information is very good to know. And a senior chief Imperial officer is described with 4 squares and 1 green square on top, and 5 blue squares on the bottom. If you happen to see a green square, those guys are most likely to be a senior chief or higher. Alright, next on our list is a Stormtrooper Senior Master Sergeant, known as a Master Chief Imperial Officer. Those guys are tough. They have 3 gray squares and 2 green squares on top, and 5 blue squares on the bottom. Those guys think they're moths, and they're not. And they look like they're moths, or they look like they're admirals, because basically the green squares are on the top. But what they do is they're Master Chief petty officers in the Navy like that. These guys are clearly like the highest traditional Imperial enlisted people, and they're in charge of all admin work properties. But and that's where we get to next. Those guys are basically the admins of all the enlistment ranks. And as we move on to the next rank, the Stormtrooper Master Sergeant First Class, known as a Grand Chief Imperial Officer. Those guys are way higher. These ranks are very forgotten because we don't have enough people that enlist to that. So, a Stormtrooper Master Sergeant First Class, those guys are intense. And they come along well, like Sergeant Majors. They come along great. And with Grand Chief Imperial Officers, they're like the role of a Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy in E10. Those guys are like one of the highest traditions and that you could get in the Imperial enlistment. But we have more ranks than that, so allow us to introduce the two highest ranks ever known. And enlisted 11 is a Grand Sergeant. Grand Sergeants are nowhere to be called grandpas or grandmas. These bad boys are just as tough as Marine Corps. If you ever see a pineapple on a sergeant rank position, the worst thing you could do is call them a pineapple sergeant. And that is when they intensely scream at you for disrespecting their rank. So we want to call them exactly what their rank is. Example for this bad boy, a Grand Sergeant has 1 gray square and 4 green squares on the top, and with 5 blue squares on the bottom. These are also known as Grand Master Chief Imperial Officers. We haven't got one like this yet, but they're very intense. And I'm getting a phone call. But right now I'm in the middle of class, so they're going to have to wait. So, let's see. Those guys are the baddest people ever known. And they'll mess you up good as long as you listen to them well. And the last rank of the Imperial Enlisted, this is a Stormtrooper Chief Sergeant, known as a First Chief Imperial Officer, the highest rank enlisted in the Imperial military enlistment. These guys are responsible for all the enlisted people in the Academy of the Empire. A Chief Sergeant is someone who is like a sergeant, but a lot worse. And they're a lot intense. They have more superior over every sergeant that they have. And for a Chief Imperial Officer, First Chief Imperial Officer, you're not the lowest rank. A corporal is like a high rank. A corporal is a high rank. A corporal is an E4. So an E12 is a Chief Sergeant, known as a First Chief Imperial. Those guys are the toughest transitions ever known. They're like the highest ranks. And a really fun fact, if you are a Staff Sergeant or an E6 or above, you can qualify to sign up and become an officer. And so, that answers the question. Second Lieutenant is higher than a Chief Sergeant. Right now I'm in the middle of teaching. But if you have to go, you have to go. But, let's see. Next up, this is where we're going to get into officers. Alrighty. This is when I was an admiral when I made this. But this is what an Officer 1 looks like. A second lieutenant. A second lieutenant is basically what is known in the Army. And the Navy is known as an ensign. These guys are just recruits into officers. And they are higher than a Chief Sergeant. And the rank is identified as 1 red square on top and 1 blue square in the bottom. And the next rank that I'm going to introduce is first lieutenants. And a first lieutenant is a rank that is described as a lieutenant junior grade in the Navy. These guys have one red square on top of the blue square and two blue squares in the bottom. And these bad boys are in charge of every second lieutenant, and they're like captains, but they're like the assistant captains, and they're in charge of all the enlisted people and the second lieutenant. Basically the second lieutenant is a squad leader just like a first lieutenant, but they're also like platoon leaders as well. And so next up is we have the rank of captain. In the rank of captain in the Army, that's what it's called. And in the Navy, it is called a lieutenant. And these guys, this is where they're in charge full-time of the squad full-time. These guys are in charge of the platoon full-time. They will make sure that you fall in an inspection. And a captain in the Army and a lieutenant in the Navy looks like two red squares on top and two blue squares in the bottom, along with an artillery pen. If you see one of these guys are new officers. They're new officers that enjoy their time doing what they gotta do and do their dedication and what they have to be done. The senior captains in the Army are what's known as a major, and in the Navy it's called a lieutenant commander. And these guys have three blue squares on top, one blue square in the bottom, along with two red squares, one on the middle and one on the right. And these guys are the senior captains. They're like captains, but way higher, and they're also intro into the commanding position. And so these guys are like the superiors in the squads and the platoons, but their full like platoon leader is actually a commander. What it's known as is a lieutenant colonel. And these guys are basically the rank that is mirrored upside down. They have two red squares on top along with a blue square and three blue squares on the bottom. These guys are the commanders of the squad. They're kind of like moths when it comes to like one guy that was in like episode 6 who was afraid of Darth Vader's presence. He was a commander who transitioned into a moth, and they mistakenly left his rank as a commander. So that is the rank that really platoons into squads. If you see one of these guys, watch out, because they can also report to the Emperor, such as myself. Alright. Next rank is a captain in the Navy, and in the Army, a colonel. This is where they get their second pen. So it looks like one pen in each sleeve, and three red squares on the top, three blue squares in the bottom. These guys are like the senior commanders, and they're also known as colonels. These guys are one of the highest officer ranks you can get before command. And what they do is just like a commander. They'll fall in, but they're also a little bit directors of the Death Star. These guys are like assistant managers of the Death Star. They want to make sure that they're in, that they're doing their goals, protecting the Death Star, but it failed, and so they blew up the Death Star like moments later. Because the reason is that they couldn't stop the rebels after they had a lot of teaming with against it. So it's kind of like towards to what happened almost to the third Death Star like several times. And so my responsibility is to make sure that the Death Star is safe and everything else is safe and protected. That is how I became a commissioner of the Empire. They put me there because the Emperor decided to step down and put me in charge. And so I have all access into ranks that he made. And next rank, this is where you enter the command position. You will be a Commodore if you are in commanding position. A Commodore, and that's in the Navy, is the master commanders of all commanders. They are the highest ones in charge of every commander. And They're also known as brigadier generals in the Army. If you see these guys, watch out. They're not there to be messed with. And as we go overboard with the next one, is a rear admiral known as a major general in the Army. A rear admiral and a major general is 25% of commanding officers. These guys are 25% commanding officers, known as the assistant commanding officers. These guys will be in charge of like the Imperial Star Destroyers, the TIE Fighters, and all the division of the Empire, where all it's covered in ships. These guys are in charge of that. And in the Army, these guys are slightly in charge of the of all of every squad leader, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and get it all that out of the way. And they'll be also receiving their second pen on the left sleeve. So yeah, they'll have 2 pens in the left sleeve, 1 pen in the right sleeve. And the next rank is a vice admiral, known as a lieutenant general. And these guys are the executive officers of the Empire, known as a deputy commanding officer. Their ranks as described with 4 squares and a blue square on top and 5 blue squares on the bottom. There's a lot of ranks you have to know, but in a specific branch you have to know one. You have to know one branch of the rank. So, and so with this here, with the lieutenant general and vice admirals, these guys are the executive commanding officers, and these guys you gotta watch out for because they're like commanding officers. They'll make sure that you are doing your job responsibly. And within the highest rank that usually people know is an admiral. A famous one is an admiral known as a general. An admiral is basically like a general of the Army, but an admiral is more in the Navy. An admiral is the commanding officer of all the Imperial ships, and in the Army, they are known as generals, and they are the commanding officers of every platoon, every tank, every missile that is fired, and everything that's been mechanically built. Those Army soldiers and generals, they're responsible for all that. And those guys are nowhere to be near messed with. But this is the next up is the special ranks. The special ranks, well, one of the most forgotten ranks is a fleet admiral, just like an admiral, but it has 6 red squares on top and 6 blue squares on the bottom. They're also known as command generals. These guys are specially designed for actual commanding, and they're like half grand admirals and grand generals, but they're more into fleets. So that means they're more into height, and grand command generals are more into command and leading. And so, within that, our next commanding officer ranks are the last 2, and the last 2 I see is a grand admiral and a grand general, which is the second in command, they are the command duty officers. Excuse me, executive command duty officer. A grand admiral and a grand general is an executive command duty officers of the Imperial fleet and all the Imperial work. And these guys are also government qualifying individuals, and the rank is described as 3 blue squares and 3 yellow squares on the top, and 3 blue squares and 3 red squares on the bottom. That is what a grand general and a grand admiral looks like. And so we have the last rank in the Navy and Army. This is a Grand Master Admiral, known as a Grand Master General in command. These are first in command, and these guys are the highest rank of all Imperial officers in the Academy of Officers and Imperial Enlistment. These guys are described with as 3 blue squares on top and 3 yellow squares on top, along with 6 red squares on the bottom. These guys are going to look out for the most. And you don't see them that often. These guys are rare. They're rarely earned. And those guys, they have to be in the unit for such a long time to get that. But for me, I've been a captain for 15 years. It's crazy to think. I was a captain for 15 years until they put me into the position of an admiral just to try me out to see if I could lead the whole team well, and they did. And so they put me in government. They made me into a Grand Moff because I was a very smart person and I was very capable of like protecting the Empire and the Death Star. And I also had a good memory of military since my time in the NJROTC program. The Emperor saw my service record and decided to push me up into a government officer, which I'm honored. Which I'm honored to be today as a Emperor. Before I was an Emperor, I was Grand Moff. I was the next one in line to be a leader of the whole Empire. And so they put me there, gave me a chance, and then that's where I'm at now. I'm an Emperor, which is awesome. Proud to be called that. So next up, the rank. If you're interested in ISB, the next one we're going to be talking about is security. Well, if you're wondering what ISB stands for, it stands for Imperial Security Bureau. Those guys are the police of the Empire. How would they start? Is they have their officer ranks and their enlisted ranks. So we're going to start slow because their enlisted ranks and officer ranks are not as like much to like know and so on. Yeah. First start is a security officer 1, known as an apprentice security officer. It is filled with five gray squares on top and bottom. These guys are like recruits and privates. A security officer is just like a private first class and an Imperial apprentice. Those guys have like 5 gray squares on top, 4 gray squares on the bottom with 1 blue square. Next is a master security officer with 1 square on top with 4 squares on top and bottom and a blue square in the bottom. They receive their first pen on the 4th rank enlistment. This is what it's known as a Grand Security Officer with 2 blue squares on the bottom and 3 squares on the bottom with 4 squares on top along with 1 red square. Next one is Grand Master Security Officer, which is Security Officer 5. These guys will have 3 gray squares on top and bottom along with 2 red squares top and blue squares on bottom. They will be receiving their second pen, 1 on the left sleeve, 1 on the right sleeve. And then we enter to the high enlistments, which is the assistant supervisor, and these guys will be described with as supervisors, but they're assistants. So they'll have 2 gray squares on top and bottom, along with 1 blue square with 2 red squares on top, and 3 blue squares on the bottom. Next rank is a supervisor, and those guys are going to have 2 gray squares on top and bottom, and 3 red squares top and 3 blue squares on bottom. This is where it gets interesting. If you completed your task as a supervisor and you do yourself a good job, this is where you get your second pen on the left sleeve. You guys will be known as assistant administrators, and those guys will be the king of like programming and hacking just to fix the world in peace. And those guys will have 1 gray square top bottom along with 1 blue square with 3 red squares on top and 4 blue squares on bottom. And those guys are the assistants to the administrator. And then we have vice administrator, which those guys are like assistants, but the more senior assistants. Those guys will have 1 gray square top bottom and 4 red squares on the top, 4 blue squares on the bottom. And the main rank what we guys have is an administrator. They work just like admirals and generals in the entire Navy and Army, but they're police. So they're ISB, they're ranking officer 5, administrators. These guys are known for being the main programmers and leaders, which you guys receive your second pen on the right sleeve, which means you have 4 pens in total, 5 red squares on top, 5 blue squares on the bottom. You guys are in charge of all supervisors and all security officers to make sure they're in task, ready for their leadership and dedication and following. And with the most special ranks, I skipped one, my bad. This one is a SWAT administrator. These guys are the most senior administrators that I've ever known. And these guys are described with 6 red squares on top, 6 blue squares on the bottom. They're just like fleet admirals and command generals. They are the highest rank in what you can get until you've been chosen to be in the ISB division, which is like the ISB division, which is the ISB command division. That's what I meant. With 4, same thing, 4 pens, and that's how many pens you can get there. And so if you do a good job as an administrator or SWAT administrator, and if one director decides to step down, that means the other moves up. So, Command Security Officer 2, we have Assistant Director of ISB. It is described with 6 red squares on the top, 5 blue squares on the bottom, and 1 white square on the right. These guys are the Assistant Directors of ISB. They're in charge of the whole thing, 25%. And the 50% is a Deputy Director, which they have 6 red squares on top, 4 blue squares on the bottom with 2 white squares. These guys are known as Deputy Directors, and they are halfly in charge of all command. And within the highest one you could get for Director, these guys are with 2 blue pens. Not 2 blue pens, my bad. They have 4 pens, like the same thing like every other officer does, mostly. They have 6 red squares on top, 3 blue squares on the bottom, 3 white squares on the bottom right. And with that, this is going to lead us to the top commanding of ISB, which is the second in command, Grand Directors. They have 3 red squares on the top, 3 orange squares on top, 3 blue squares on the bottom, and 3 white squares on the bottom. That is a Grand Director. A Grand Master Director has 6 orange squares on top, 3 blue squares on the bottom, along with 3 white squares. These guys are the most important people that you have to watch out for. It's between an assistant supervisor all the way to a Grand Master Director. These guys are like the bosses, and you have to make sure you watch out for them. And the next ranks, before we get into government, we want to go through the Imperial Cobra Kai ranks. If anyone is a Cobra Kai fan, say hello. I'm going to be explaining every Cobra Kai rank that we have made in the Imperial military. Okay, it looks like none of you are. Okay. Our first rank is just like the recruits in Navy, but they're more karate. They're stealth. That's the most stealthiest branch. If you're ever thinking about being a ninja or a karate master, this is where to go. First rank is a karate recruit. Just like a private and a recruit, they have 2 blue squares on the side. Next up is a karate apprentice, but instead of having 1 blue square, they have 1 gray. They have 2 gray squares on top bottom. For a karate white belt, no hitting, sit back down in class, no hitting necessarily. So a karate white belt is earned after completing all karate tutorials. And an enlisted 4 is a karate yellow belt. Oh yeah, that's right. I gotta explain that. A karate yellow belt is a 2 gray squares on top and 2 yellow squares on the bottom. All right, guys, enough arguing. E5 is a karate orange belt with 3 gray squares on top and 3 orange squares on the bottom. Next rank is 4 gray squares on top, 4 green squares on the bottom. These guys are karate green belts. And a karate blue belt is 5 gray squares on top and 5 gray squares on the bottom. A karate purple belt is 6 purple squares on the bottom, 6 gray squares on top. Karate beige belt is 6 beige squares on the bottom and 6 gray squares on top. Gonna have to keep going with this. And the highest enlisted rank in the karate is a brown belt, which is worth 6 brown squares and 6 gray squares on top. And that's on the enlisted. And the most people that are highest rank here is officers. And so when you get to red belt, you have 6 red squares on top, 6 blue squares on the bottom, just like a SWAT administrator, generals, command generals, and like so on. And Power, can you please stop tapping me right now? I'm teaching. So we have 6 red squares on top, 6 blue squares on the bottom. So yeah, that's an Officer 1. Officer 2 is the Assistant Sensei. And Assistant Senseis are likely like Senseis. And they have like 6 red squares on top. And 5 blue squares on the bottom. And 1 black square. They represent Senseis. And these guys are like nowhere to be messed with. Officers are nowhere to be messed with. And a Deputy Sensei will have 6 red squares on top. 4 blue squares on the bottom. And along with 2 black squares. And a real sensei will look like this in the Imperial military. They have 6 red squares on top, 3 blue squares on the bottom, and 3 black squares also on the bottom right. And then we're going to move on to the highest ones here, is a Grand Sensei. They are part of the command, and they look like they have 6 red squares on top, and 2 blue squares on the bottom, and 4 black squares next to the bottom. And then we have the next one is the Master Sensei, and these guys have 6 red squares on top, 1 blue square on the bottom, along with 5 black squares. And these guys are very interesting to know. And these guys are like the highest senseis, and the highest sensei truly is a Grandmaster Sensei, which has 6 red squares on top and 6 black squares on the bottom. I know it looks evil, but let me explain. This rank is typically inspired by a black belt with 3 red stripes. That is a real sensei. And they're like Kiyashios. And they teach everything a lot of times. And for that, we're going to move on to the Kiyashio ranking system next. In which, I don't know how to pronounce these words there, but they're actually Chinese. So, a Shihan is described with 5 red squares on top with 1 orange square, along with 6 black squares. A Shihan is more of a helper, like government for karate, and that's where they teach about karate and their systems and negotiate with what's going on. And a next one is Doji. A Doji is ranked like as a 4 red squares on top with 2 orange squares, and they have 6 black squares on the bottom. Look out for those guys. Look out for the Imperial ones with orange squares. Those guys are much tougher than you look. Alright. And then we have a Renji, which is like a senior doji, and he teach well in class. And as we can stop hitting people, I will turn that off soon as possible. If you guys keep it up, I will actually turn that off with PvP. But next is a Renji here. It's described as 3 red squares, 3 orange squares, and 6 black squares in the bottom. Those guys are tough. Remember to look out for them. Now we gotta look out for the main ones. A Kashio. This is an assistant Kashio. One of the highest ranking karate officers here. An assistant Kashio is described as 2 red squares on top of the yellow square on the left, along with 3 orange squares on the right, with 6 black squares on the bottom. That is known as an assistant Kashio. And the next rank is a deputy Kashio, which is described as 1 red square on top with 2 yellow squares on the top left, along with 3 orange squares on the right, along with 6 black squares on the bottom. The last rank in karate is what Tyron is, or Wasteless 180. This person is the highest rank in all karate. Look out for him the most. That is when he will chop your nuts up if you mess up. Even your guts. These guys are the highest ranking officers of all karate. And Kashios These guys are the main teachers in all karate, which basically is they're also is directors. They're not just teachers, they are directors of the entire karate system. And it is described as 3 yellow squares on the top left, 3 orange squares on the top right, and 6 black squares in the bottom. Those guys are nowhere to be nearly messed with. And I want you guys to understand that these ranks personally have a meaning. They have a meaning of each responsibility. And they're not just ranks, guys. These ranks are also called job titles. These are what is who you are and what you want to do. And then within that, if you are an officer and you make it halfway to being a command officer, you have the opportunity to sign to government if you are interested. And the government branch is the highest ranking branch out of all Imperial. And so, this here is the Imperial government ranking system. These guys are the highest rank ever. And you don't want to mess with each one of them. So, these are higher than the highest Imperial officer. If you are, example, a Grand Admiral, Grand General, or a director of ISB or a director of Kashio, or all the karate, these ranks are going to outrank you very well. And the first rank is a Chief Warrant Officer. A Chief Warrant Officer looks like one pen on each sleeve with a blue square on top and a yellow square on the bottom. Look out for those guys. The next rank is a Master Chief Warrant Officer. They have 2 blue squares on top, 1 yellow square in the bottom, and 1 red square in the bottom. I forgot about that, my bad. And a Grandmaster Chief Warrant Officer is 3 blue squares on the top, 2 red squares in the bottom, and 1 yellow square in the bottom as well. Next rank is a Assistant Governor. Governors are more likely to be watchable. So, these guys have 3 yellow squares. Not 3 yellow squares, I meant 2 yellows. 3 blue squares on the top, 1 red square in the bottom, and 2 yellow squares in the bottom as well. And, why don't you guys separate right now? I'm getting tired, and you guys want to know something? I'm recording a video, and so everything you'll hear is already going to be on YouTube. So I want you guys to act appropriate in class. I appreciate it. So, we have 3 blue squares, 1 red square, and 2 yellow squares. This is what an assistant governor looks like. They are responsible for the Imperial. I'll explain more into that after. But, next is a vice governor, commanding government officer 2. A vice governor is we have one, and Jamal Crowder, he stepped down because of classified information, but he was not feeling good, so he had to step down. So a vice governor is someone who is basically like the assistant to a governor, and they have 2 blue pens on the left sleeve and 1 pen on the right sleeve. And these guys have 3 red squares on the bottom with 1 yellow square on the bottom, with 4 blue squares on top. And the next one is a popular one from the Imperial military, is a governor. Governors like Tarkin, governors like Tarkin, myself, my friend, let's see who else is a governor, Southworth, and Ezra is now a governor, Ezra Ahmad. He's now a governor. He's one of the, he's like a Grand Moff, but more necessarily, governors have like 4 blue squares on top, 2 red squares on the bottom, and 2 yellow squares in the bottom as well. These guys are governors, and these guys are aware of and watch outs for it. And if a Moff decides to step down, that is how you know, as a governor, you become a Moff. And basically, we have an assistant Moff right now. His name is Dylan Southworth. And these guys are like the helpers of the Moff section. They're described as 5 blue squares on top, 3 red squares on the bottom with 2 yellow squares. And so the next rank is a Moff. And a Moff, we have one in this classroom right now. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Alex Bryan. She's a Moff. She just got promoted to a Moff. And she's now the, what is it? The assistant director of the Death Star. Let me see. Let me have a look at it again. I don't know. Let me get the chain of command. I'll get the chain of command after, actually. But she's on the chain of command. She is one of the directors of our Death Star. Let's give her the biggest congratulations right here. You, sir, are a private. You have to wait. Okay. So, you are so, Moff Alex Bryan is described with 6 blue squares on top and 4 red squares on the bottom with 2 yellow squares. Well, the reason why she's there is because she actually joined the Imperial military and has ranked up to the whole system for the past month. So that is how you know she's here. And she's 18 and older. And so you have to be 18 and up to actually work government and officer training. If you are a junior, you can't do that because your brain, no offense, but if you are under 18, your brain is not fully functional to run as an officer. But you can. There is an optional thing. You can be the highest enlisted. The law does not say that. So with Imperial, the law does not say that Imperial. So you're not ready. You're just new here right now. But let me try to explain everything, okay? There's more to be explained than what's to be ready. So, a Moff has 2 pens on each sleeve. And they have, again, 6 blue squares on top, 4 red squares on the bottom, and 2 yellow squares on the bottom as well. And the next rank is, we have a Grand Moff, and we recently got Ari as our new Grand Moff today. She's described with 6 blue squares on top, 3 yellow squares, and 3 red squares on the bottom. With these guys are the main. This is the main director of our Death Star. Ari Gonzalez has done an example job, an explanatory of explaining how everything works and how the church works. And if you guys are personally religious, she is a great option. And then I just made her into a director of the church, the one that's next door to the Death Star, and it's across from here. That is our church, and that's where we go and preach every Sunday. Next rank is a high commanding government officer is a Master Moff. With these guys are the senior directors of all the Empire, which is, yeah, these guys are senior directors of all the Empire Death Star. They have described as 3 red squares on top with 3 blue squares on top as well, and 3 red squares at the bottom and 3 yellow squares in the bottom as well. That is a Master Moff, and these guys are nowhere easily to be messed with. And the next rank is a second Moff. We're going to talk about 3 of the highest ranks that we all should be listening and all we should be aware of. 3 of the highest ranks ever known. And Parward, I swear to God, I'm going to call you out for not being ready if you don't listen. Alrighty. So, a second Moff is described. That's it. Moff, take this guy out of here. I said Moff. Alex Bryan, take this guy out of here. Cobra, sit back down, please. Moff, keep an eye on Power, please. Alright. Now we're back to it here. A High Command Government Officer 5 is a second Moff. And these guys are like the highest traditional. These guys are the Assistant Emperors. They have 3 red squares on top with 3 blue squares on top as well. And 3 white squares in the bottom with 3 yellow squares in the bottom as well. They earn like 3 pens on the left sleeve and 2 pens on the right sleeve. And with that, A High Commanding Government Officer 6 is a first Moff. And, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we have a second Moff, and his name is Seth Jerez, known as Car Club. He is the second Moff, and he's the Assistant Commissioner of the entire Empire. And my brother Rick is a Deputy Commissioner of the Empire. He has 3 pens on each sleeve, which has a rank like, 3 red squares on top, 3 blue squares on top as well, 2 white squares on the bottom, 4 yellow squares in the bottom as well. And we're going to talk about the highest rank in all of the Empire. Sorry, that was something funny. It's a little embarrassing. But I am the highest ranking Imperial officer there is, known as the CEO and founder, and known as the Commissioner of the Empire. Myself, I am an Emperor, which is known as a Grandmaster Moff. These guys are described as every 2 squares as follows: 2 red squares on top, 2 white squares on top, 2 blue squares on top, and on the bottom, 2 green squares on the bottom, 2 yellow squares on the bottom, 2 orange squares on the bottom, and 2 yellow squares on the bottom as well. They have 3 golden pens along with that, and these guys are responsible for the whole Empire. That's me. I'm responsible for everything you guys are doing. That's what I'm responsible to, and guess who I report? I report to the board of all commissioners and all emperors to see what's going on. And that's how you know that I'm the owner of the Empire. So yeah, there it is. And also the Grandmaster Moff or the Emperors, these guys are the board of all directors. That is who they are. And so yeah, that is it for our ranking system. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, reach out to me, and we'll explain everything that's about what I said in class. Par, if your question is inappropriate, do not ask it. Alright. Anybody else have questions? Before we move on to the rules and regulations. How do I sign up? How old are you right now? You can't sign up until you're 18. I'm sorry, buddy. Once you're 18 and you have Facebook, then I'll sign you up. You cool with that? But Cobra can sign you up in the junior program because you are a minor. If that's cool. She's a corporal and we do not have a sergeant. So corporals are like sergeants, but they're not sergeants. They'll sign you in easily. So Cobra, you want to find a way to sign this guy up? He'll be our cadet private. Alrighty. Okay, any more questions? Alright. Okay, good. No. Alright. Alex Bryan, do you have any questions? Alrighty. Thank God you're understanding. I love you guys. I love you guys so much. Okay. Now, he can't hear you. I can hear her just fine. I'm on the call with her. Alright. Yeah, I'm on a call with her on Facebook. So, with that being said, we're going to go over the rules and regulations. This is the rules that are in the group chat. Every adult needs to know this. Even some kids who are interested in the Imperial Navy or Imperial military, they need to know this. So, Imperial rules. The first rule is, in shifts, you will always be active unless proven excused. Which means, if you are sick, if you have to go out with your family, friends is not excusable, family's more excusable. But if you are sick, injured, decided to go out with family, go to shovel the snow, or lost a power outage, that's the first rule. You have to prove that you are excused. Because if you are not excused, and if I put a handshake gesture, that means is you are not excused. And that's something that's on you, and I cannot control that. But if I happen to know if it's family related, then you're good. 50-50. If you are sick, but Cobra, I understand that. I do it too. But as long as you're home safe and you're not contagious, I'm turning 17 tomorrow. That count? No. You have to actually be 18. So, let's see. So, I'll tell you this though, in the real military, they can sign you up with the parents' permission. Or whoever your caregiver is, they'll sign you the truck up. No problem. Excuse my language for a minute. They'll sign you the truck into the military, no problem. And you have to go through all the basics, what they're going like every 18-year-old is. I'll tell you that. If you're 17, my dad has signed in the Army for a long time, and when he had to sign to the contract, that has to be signed by a parent or consent. Yep. He told my brother in his age, and he said he was 12 or 13. Okay. Interesting. Parward, I'm going to under-investigate you of your age, law, regulation. But right now, we're in the middle of class, so I will be looking at that right now. The next rank is... No, not ranks. The next rule is... asking for ranks will not be tolerated. If you ask for a promotion, you are getting demoted, because that is a violation of our code. You have to earn your rank. Like for Cobra example, she got demoted to from sergeant to a corporal because of her classified information of actions. But that is another example, and another example is this. If I were to go around there as a private and destroyed everything that there is in the Empire, that can lead me in trouble, and that can also lead me to being demoted. And for some demotions, there are also rank demotions that are technical issues. Not all demotion is bad, okay? Not all demotions is bad, as entirely think. But, so yeah. Next rule is, always be honest with something, including if you're hiding anything, honesty is the best policy. So, part word, that one's for you. Honesty is the best policy. If you break that rule, that is a critical hit to prison. If you don't be honest with your superiors, that is when you get locked up. Example, you were caught cheating on your wife or husband or whoever your partner is. If you get caught cheating on that specific person for another, that is a misdemeanor, and that can lead to 1 year in the brig. A brig is known as a jail. Alrighty. So, honesty is the best policy. No bullying or any type of hazing. If I hear you guys constantly argue all the time, this rule has to be repetitively followed. Because bullying is a big violation to our code, and that will be a charge for harassment or assault, any type of way to put it. And the fifth one replies to your rule, part word, and exactly what I said. You have to be 18 or older to sign up. Okay? But in the junior program, it's 17 or under. Alrighty. She is not in the Imperial military. She's in the junior aspect of it. She will be remained as a private for her investigation. Alright, so within the next one is always be respectful to your peers, even if they are your supervisors or followers. Guys, I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't matter how high your rank is. You still are going to respect your peers. And you still are going to respect your followers. Because when they're trying their best, you have to look out for your lower ones. these guys are civil to our empire, and we don't want to treat them like they're the slaves and we're the people. You know what I mean? So we treat everybody with respect. That is what we do. All right? Even if you're superior, like myself, I still gotta treat you guys with respect, like which I do now. And if I ask you to do something, you do it. And if I ask you not to do something, you stop. Okay? Because if not, that is an automatic violation of the 6th mode. Alrighty. 7. If you are applying to become an officer or any type of leader, you must have a clean record in the Imperial roleplay. Ask a commanding officer or regional government staff to test you to see how much you know about the Galactic Empire and experiences. This will be heavily appreciated. That rule applies to you guys. If you guys want to become an officer or a regional staff, you have to talk to me or Alex Bryan. Alex Bryan is a command staff of the regional government. I'm also one of those guys too. A commanding officer would be someone like an admiral, a vice admiral, a general. If you're thinking about becoming an officer, talk to a general, an admiral, or ISB directors. If you're becoming a regional government, talk to me or Alex Bryan. That's how we do our jobs. Alrighty. And you must be an E6 or higher to do it. So, next is the 8th one is important. Any type of exploitation videos of videograph will not be tolerated unless permission by regional government staff. If you are recording my class without my permission, just know that we're watching you ahead of time. And if you dare to break that rule, we will know. And we will consult you to take down the video. Because if not, we will leak everything your classified information has. And I highly appreciate it that if you don't break any of these rules, including that one. Alright? The 9th rule is necessary for everyone. Do not spread your classified information or anybody else's unless being asked by a commanding officer or a regional government staff. That one is important. If you record something, that is an automatic violation. It is. Videographing can break lots of rules without even knowing. Because that information in school is classified right now. Okay? And the 10th general order of the Imperial rules in the group chat is, if you are feeling violated by human rights or disability rights, report immediately to a regional government staff or an officer of a branch. This is a rule implying who knows the 16 human rights and the 31 disability rights from the ADA, Americans Disability Act. Some people who are serving in this empire, like myself, have a disability. If you didn't know that, I have a disability. I have autism spectrum disorder and a minor spectrum. I have that. And that did not stop me from teaching when I am now. So if you feel like that you're being violated, you must know the rules and say something. There you go. Alright? And some of the rules that I'm teaching is according by the law. Alright? So yeah, if you feel like you're being threatened, you should say something to one of us. To me and Alex Bryan. But if you feel like you're having a disability, always check with your doctors and your consult or anything, because they'll help you and reach out, find out. I was diagnosed with autism at 2 years old, so that's classified. An 11th rule implies to an ISB. If you are an ISB, Impurity Security Bureau, you are not allowed to share personal classified information. You are not the regional government. You are security. They are both separate things. ISB, police, regional government, control. What do you guys think? The difference between control and police is that the government has more control and more command. And ISB is the symbol of that. Alright? Never, number 12, never force your staff to do your dirty work. You have to do their dirty work. This rule implies to being respectful. We're not doing your dirty work for you. You have to do our dirty work. Because we're the ones who gives the orders. Alright? Next up. And that example implies to you. Cobra will be your superior. If you don't do what she says, and she does your dirty work, man, you're going to have a lot of talk with me, and you're not going to like it. Make sure you follow that rule. Alrighty. 13. If you are new to the Empire and you have not answered one of my questions about asking what branch you want to join, you have a 5-minute notice to respond before you are drafted to a branch that you don't want to join. This implies to 18-year-olds or older that don't know what to serve. We will draft you into a branch for you, whether you like it or not. Because we're waiting 5 minutes, and we don't want to waste your time waiting all of that, okay? Excuse me for a minute. Ugh. I know, I should have been ready with the water before teaching. Let's see. The 14th rule is the only way to transfer from your original branch to your new branch is you have to be promoted for an E6 or above. E6 is the most common rank that you should be if you want to transfer. Okay? What? Wait. If he does it without telling me to... What do you mean by that? Okay. But, let's see. You have to be at least an E6 or above to actually transfer. Let's see. Ask permission to do something if you are... A lot of people don't know this, but if you don't ask permission to be AFK without anything, this can lead to questioning. So, ask permission to do something if you are going to be AFK. This rule only applies to enlisted people and officers. If you are a government officer, that does not apply to you. Alright? Is that cool? Does anybody understand? Do you guys really understand what I'm talking about? After this, can I go get something to eat? We have about 4 more in-game rules, and then we'll be done after. 14 law rules in the chat. Then we'll talk about in-game rules after. Is that cool? Alrighty. Okay. Next one is, the 16th rule is, whenever you are distracted from doing something that you're not supposed to, you are asked to be doing work as a warning. So, with that rule, it depends. If someone is bothering you so bad you are distracted from it, and if a commissioner or if any officer see it, then you are excused from that. Because example, Cobra, there's a good example. Sage Rock, right? Or Xavier. He's a great example of a distraction. I did not yell at you because of Sage. And so with that, he was caught in distraction. So yeah, for Sage, when he keeps messing around with your world, or whatever you're doing, stop and kill him. That's what I did. Okay? And so that rule only applies to people who are distracted for nothing. Alright. 17. This one's big. Word? This one's committing to you too. If you are committing adultery on your lover or whoever your partner is with evidence, you are charged with a misdemeanor. And that is a 1-year sentence. That is a Navy law that does not need to be violated. Alright? If you are in a relationship And if you are caught with having an affair with someone that you also like, you're busted. Your whole career is over. You can never be an officer for that. Alright? And that's it. If these rules get violated 3 times in a day, you will be suspended and charged with a misdemeanor along with a demotion. If you are the lowest rank example private, will only be charged with a misdemeanor. Alright? Do you guys understand all 17 of these rules?
Yes, I do.
Alright. That rule does not apply to you if you don't have a lover. But Par, if you have a partner, that rule applies to you. Alright? It's not a bad thing to have someone you like. It is not a bad thing. Okay. Alright. Cobra, you can have your lunch, but I'm still going to be teaching in-game rules, okay? Is that cool? Okay. We got about 11 rules, okay? That we have to follow. This is the Unce de Rule. That's what I like to call it. Unce de Rule. Okay. The first rule in Minecraft when you join my world is for adults, if you are talking to a minor, be advised to only teach them about the game only. If you are not a friend until the minor is 18 or older. Otherwise, you will be charged with an exploitation with a minor. Great example, Herobrine, Sage, Cool, right? Those guys, pedophilia will not be tolerated. Got it? Yeah, good one there. Alright. We don't allow that. Next. Griefing or destruction of someone's property will be violated. Will not be violated, as this is a charge of vandalism. It also depends on how big the destruction of our property is. And if it's really bad of a deal, and if it's a big deal, that vandalism will become a felony. And convicted felons will have to pay the price.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Shut up. I'm not talking to you, Alexa. Alright. The third rule is, if you are a visitor, this is because you are a recruit or private, or you are charged with a heavy Imperial crime. So basically, if you are new here, do not worry about the charge part because you are new to the Empire. The fourth rule is, creative mode is classified unless you are a second moth or higher. Number 5. Operator is classified. That means you are not allowed to have op. And the 6th rule is, if you entered a classified room, you are charged with trespassing with a felony. Number 7. When a court occurs, do not disrupt the judge unless actual evidence of a crime or innocence. You ever guys heard the word of innocence till proven guilty, right? Have you guys heard of that? I don't think you guys heard of the way I'm going to say it. You are proven guilty until proven innocent. You are guilty until proven innocent. You guys heard of that? Alright. Seems to be in my throat. It is important to know that if you are caught doing something, there's no help. There is no help getting out of it. You're going to have to serve until time is being right by judge. Alright? And the 8th rule is very important for all Imperial troopers, including government staff and all that. You are not allowed to free prisoners or fallen Imperial soldiers. If you free somebody out you like, and they did something illegal, you'll get charged with a felony. And that's not good to have a felony. And it's in real life too. This is a real law. If you actually save somebody in prison, you will get charged with a felony. It's really bad out there. Don't do that. Let them serve their time and purpose. Do not help them if you know they're bad, right? They will deserve their punishment equally as charged. Alright. The ninth general order of the rule in-game is the only way that you want to live outside of a fortress is graduating from the Imperial Academy and the Death Star. You have to graduate to earn the rights of being outside of the fortress. The 10th rule will imply to a lot of you guys, including Zaylee. This rule is important. If you threaten a staff or officer and everybody else, that is a serious offense with a felony, which can lead to a Microsoft communication ban. Look what happened to Zaylee. She wasn't on for a few days. Why? Because she doesn't want to admit that she was with an adult. And guess what? I banned her for exploiting. That's what I did. I banned her for exploiting an adult. And I banned Hero Brian for exploitation with a minor. And that's something we don't do in here. We don't do that. That is seriously illegal. And that stuff will get you charged with a felony and an exploitation with a minor. Not a good look on you if you're 18. And the last rule is let's be respectful and have a freaking great time. What to expect versus what not to expect. Expect me to be very loud in every video, because I cannot control myself from turning myself down in emotion. I can't do that. I'm a very, very emotional person. And I'm also a very strict person as well. Some rules that I implied are good, and they're supposed to teach you to do things better. Alrighty, welcome back, Cobra. And word, let me quiz you. What is the first rule in the Imperial military? In-game. What is the first in-game rule in the Imperial military? You are going to promise you are not going to be friends with a minor when you're 18, right? You're only going to teach them what's right. That's in the rule packet. I want to take that as a no. Okay. You're going to learn that later in the review time. That's all I'm going to say. And this class is important to know. Okay? If you have any questions that's involved in this class, and you learned and you forget, this is why I'm uploading it to YouTube. So you guys understand better with these, with the rules and regulations. And so, with that being said, I am going to get the chain of command out right now. And each chain of command has a rank involved with a other job that they're responsible for. So we do not have an assistant supervisor. We don't have that yet. We'll be waiting until that role has been filled. Jamal Crowder is the Deputy Death Star Supervisor. Ezra Ahmad is a governor, and he's in charge of the Death Star supervisingly. And for Dylan Southworth, he is the Assistant Director of the Death Star. Alex Bryan, right next to here, is the Deputy Director of our Death Star. Like I said before, Ari Gonzalez is the Death Star Director. Greenberg is our Grand Director of the Death Star. Seth Jerez is the Assistant Commissioner of the Empire. for my brother Rick Gonzalez, he is the Deputy Commissioner of our Empire. He's the one who came up with the idea with the fortress, being with the force field, which is why I built the portals, because of his idea. And I am the Commissioner of the Empire. That's who I am. Alright, sure thing, Cobra. And so, that is it for class today. I really appreciate you guys understanding every bit of it. If you guys have any questions, concerns, comments, leave it all to YouTube. If you are a soldier, 18 and up, in my group chat, DM me or DM one of these guys up here. We're the ones who are in charge of all that. Thank you guys so much, and make sure to like and subscribe so I can upload more videos next week. Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you all for learning today. Peace out.